For decades, geopolitical conflict in the Middle East meant sovereign nations mobilizing massive armies to breach a neighbor's border or blast wall. During the Arab-Israeli conflicts of 1967 and 1973, coalitions of national militaries deployed heavy armor, aircraft, and tens of thousands of troops in direct combat. This map shows 10 distinct flashpoints currently active across the region, from Gaza and Lebanon to Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and the Red Sea. Yet traditional armies are almost entirely absent. Sovereign boundaries fade into the background, replaced by a decentralized web of non-state actors. The Middle East has settled into a state of permanently managed, irregular proxy war. This is a functional equilibrium that persists without requiring a total military victory or a final peace treaty to sustain itself. Groups like Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen began as underground movements. Today, they are the primary military operators in the battle space, fielding heavy artillery, advanced drones, and tens of thousands of fighters. Iran acts as the central patron for this network. By providing weapons, training, and financing, Tehran has cultivated an axis of resistance to project power well beyond its own borders, without deploying official Iranian battalions. These modern proxies possess significant local autonomy. The Houthis, for example, utilize Iranian resources but fight for their own local grievances and aspirations for territorial control in Yemen. This forces traditional powers, like Israel and the Saudi-aligned Sunni bloc, to combat decentralized networks. Instead of fighting an enemy capital, they must neutralize diffuse, mobile factions embedded within varying civilian populations. State sponsors prefer this matrix. It allows powers to bleed their rivals and project regional influence while maintaining plausible deniability, avoiding the severe costs of direct invasions. The vacuum that allowed this proxy network to expand was created in 2003. The United States invasion of Iraq dismantled a long-standing geopolitical equilibrium. The immediate decapitation of the Iraqi state structure removed the central authority that had maintained strict internal control and secured the national borders. Prior to 2003, Saddam Hussein's Iraq functioned as a highly effective, albeit brutal, Sunni containment wall. His regime physically blocked Iranian hegemonic ambitions from moving westward into the Arab neighborhood. The 2003 regime change created a massive power vacuum. This allowed Iran to insert proxy militias and establish a contiguous land bridge through Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This breach dissolved sovereign borders, replacing centralized state control with fluid militia territories. The attempt to engineer a democratic state dismantled the region's internal balancing mechanism. It sparked a frantic proxy land grab that dictates the current map. 8 years later, the 2011 Arab Awakening triggered a second collapse. The massive anti-authoritarian uprisings threatened nearly every entrenched regime in the Middle East. To understand how these regimes reacted, international relations theorists use a concept developed by political scientist Nazih Ayubi, the fierce state. A strong state works with and through its society. A fierce state lacks deep integration with its population. It relies entirely on its intelligence services, coercion, and raw power to maintain control. The 2011 uprisings presented a terminal security dilemma for these leaders. For a fierce state, national security becomes completely synonymous with regime survival. Terrified of domestic collapse, these regimes intervened violently in neighboring conflicts. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad chose to ignite a devastating civil war rather than relinquish power. Because these leaders view any shift in regional power as an existential threat to their personal survival, they are structurally locked in to aggressive, preemptive defense strategies. This structural paranoia, combined with autonomous proxy networks, created new rules of engagement. The result is the escalation loop. The escalation loop consists of 3 sequential steps: provocation, calculated retaliation, and deterrent signaling. In the retaliation phase, actors deliberately select remote targets to limit physical casualties. This mathematical precision maximizes visible impact while minimizing actual body counts. This calculation allows an actor to signal strength to its domestic base and allies. It fulfills the political requirement for a response, but intentionally stops short of the threshold that would force an adversary into an all-out war. The autonomy of proxy groups complicates this delicate loop. local militias frequently provoke conflicts based on their own timelines, which can drag their state sponsors into an escalation cycle they actively wanted to avoid. In the modern Middle East, violence is rarely used to conquer and hold territory. It operates as a heavily calibrated, bloody language used to negotiate boundaries and deter rivals. When analyzing the region's future, forecasters typically present three models: full-scale regional war, comprehensive peace, or a state of perpetual crisis. A full-scale regional war is structurally blocked by economic realities. Years of severe financial challenges and heavy sanctions have severely weakened economies like Iran's, limiting their capacity to fund extended, conventional military operations. Furthermore, because regime survival is paramount for a fierce state, leaders will consistently pull back from the brink of total war. A massive conventional conflict guarantees domestic instability and their own eventual overthrow. The second path, comprehensive peace, points to recent diplomatic efforts. Normalization agreements, such as the 2020 Abraham Accords, demonstrate significant top-down, state-level commitments to de-escalation and economic cooperation. But these state-level treaties fail to account for the region's complex web of non-state actors. Official diplomatic agreements hold little to no leverage over autonomous proxy militias fighting for their own localized goals. State regimes are too fragile to survive a total war, and proxy networks are too decentralized to enforce total peace. Both binary extremes fail to match the reality on the ground. The geopolitical reality is the third path, the same as it ever was: equilibrium. A continuation of proxy battles, sporadic clashes, and diplomatic brinkmanship without a decisive resolution. The region's modern architecture, composed of fragile, fierce states and highly armed proxy militias, is built to absorb this low-level violence. The system processes retaliatory strikes and shifting alliances without boiling over into regional destruction. The ultimate proof of this equilibrium is the rise of non-exclusive alliances. Gulf states like the United Arab Emirates will fund operations against Iranian proxies in one theater, while simultaneously signing trade partnerships and engaging in diplomacy with Tehran in another. There are wildcards. Sudden shifts in U.S. foreign policy or a domestic regime collapse can rapidly alter individual nodes on the map and reset local power balances. The Middle East operates as a resilient, self-balancing matrix. In this system, managed crisis acts as the stable baseline, absorbing shocks that would otherwise lead to total regional collapse.